I really am going to focus mostly. Oh, by the way, I didn't actually prepare tonight. In the Daring Faith series, we're looking at imagination, and I looked at that on the thing, and I went, no, not that. But I always like to start things with a joke, so I decided not to do a PowerPoint. You can just imagine I did a really good PowerPoint. Out of that verse, there's a whole bunch of things you can take, those verses, but I'm going to focus on 20, which is now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we can ask or imagine according to his power is at work within us. Where it says immeasurably more there, that gets translated a whole bunch of ways, and I'm sitting there looking at the different ways going, why is everyone doing that slightly differently? So I went and I actually looked up the Greek like the nerd I am. There's 3 different words that pertain there, and they're all pretty much sort of words that mean the most, the best, the amazing. And you get this real impression that Paul is struggling to communicate just how much more than we can ask and imagine that God can do according to his power in us. So, that's it. Do you get that moment where you just realise I've just given away the game? But anyway. No, it's all right. There's a few ways we can go with imagination, and that is one of them. The other one is what is imagination and what is its role in our faith? And there's a couple of different ways it plays out. When I was I'm guessing I must have been about 6. Considering I gave my life to Christ at around 7, this could actually be I've just realised this could just literally this moment realised, I wonder how much of a part this played. But anyway, I was already developing a bit of a kind of a laziness about me, a little bit of I can put that off till later kind of thing going on there, even at that age. And we had bikes, and we'd had some bikes stolen. And so we locked up our bikes every night. We rode our bikes pretty much every day. And so there was, as it is, me and my brother, there were arguments over whose turn it was to lock the bikes. And the argument had gone on for some time until it turned out that it was my go. And I, instead of going down and just locking up the bikes, knowing that we were finished with them for the day, I put it off. And it gets dark. And I wasn't great with the dark. I was probably fine with the dark. I was really scared of being in the dark with other things. I was scared of what I couldn't see, I guess. And eventually, compelled by the love of my parents, because, even when it's tough, it's love. I was chased out the door in the cold of the night to go and lock these bikes up. And I'll paint a bit of a picture. We had a back door, and then you go along the edge of the house, and then round the corner, and the bikes were locked up around the corner. So I'm coming up on that corner as a 6-year-old, and I hear one of the most frightful sounds. Now, I didn't know what the sound was, but it was frightful. It went something like, "Mwah!" So there's me at the back of the house like, I was too young to swear, so I obviously said other words. Golly, gosh, what is this? And I'm just frozen in fear. Just cannot do anything. And I wait, and I can't tell you how long I waited. I could have been there for like 3 days for all I know. I was scared, lost all track of time, passed out of time and memory. And eventually I kind of you start, I haven't heard it again, so maybe it's gone. I take one step. It's louder. I'm gone. I have bolted. I've gapped it at such a high speed. Apparently there were scorch marks all the way back to the back door. I have literally run through the house to the most populated room in the house, which is our lounge room, where the black and white TV was blaring. Yep, we're going back that far, black and white TV. And apparently I left the ground somewhere near the beginning of the lounge room and launched myself under a piece of furniture, curled up in a ball, and was inconsolable for who knows how long until somebody could get out of me. Now, I don't know if I was told what had made that sound at that point, but what ensued was many, many nights of my dad having to come and console me while I had nightmares. At some point later, and I don't know if I was told this at the time, but some time later, I found out the noise was my dad. So, yeah, he wasn't, he was trying to scare me, but his kind of, when we talked about it afterwards, his philosophy was that if he scared me enough, I'd go and do the bikes earlier because I wouldn't want to be, all those sort of things. It was the 80s, Worse things happened in the 80s than that, I can assure you. But the thing there that I really want to focus on is that what I imagined was there and what was actually there were two very different things. And so when it comes to our faith, you look at that word imagine, image, that's got image in it. We are literally conjuring images of things that we don't know, things we cannot see. Now that goes two ways. Hebrews 11:1 puts it that now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. So automatically we've got that, imagination plays a role in faith. Next time someone says, well, you're just imagining it. You're God, you're just imagining it. Well, I kind of am. Yeah, you're right. I don't know, that's how you want to go with that one. But anyway. Against faith, we've got doubt and fear. So doubt, on the other hand, is the fear of what is not hoped for. And the assurance that we're not seeing that. We're seeing that instead. And so imagination has this huge role. Imagination is just a tool. It's a gift we're given. But it needs to be guided by something, right? We can't just let it run free. Otherwise, we're just going to be a slave to fear and doubt as much as we're going to be a slave to our own passions of what we see as the result. So we've got to anchor that to something by what we know. Good thing we can go back to that verse, that Ephesians 3:20, and look at, then we can ask or imagine according to his power that is in work in us. And that's a really big thing, that according to his power that is working within us. It's not about us, it's about him. Our imagination as a tool is something we're given to serve God with. So next time, I guess, we're in that place of doubt, the other place we need to go is that if we believe in the God of the universe, the almighty King of the universe, if this is who is guiding our steps, if this is who we serve, then, and he's very clearly said that all things will work for the good, right? We know that. So what are we worried about? What exactly are you worried about then? Is there any reason to worry? If the almighty King of the universe that can do anything, literally anything, and he says, everything will work for the good of those who love me and are called according to my purpose, his purpose, we literally have nothing to worry about. If you look around and everything is crashing down around you, there might be a very good reason. It might be your fault. I know in my past, there's definitely points where everything has been crashing around me and it is 100% my fault. But when I switch myself back on and I remember who it is that I serve, the thing that has carried me through is the understanding that everything works for the good of those who love God. And so that doubt and fear, or that part of the imagination, it's going to happen. But there are anchors that we can bring ourselves back with. And that should be one. If we're going to trust God, if we're going to believe that he is this thing, we better trust it. And trusting is, at that point, being able to say, well, I can't see the way out, but there must be one, and it must be coming. The light of the tunnel, you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it must be coming. And that's what trust is. And so when we're imagining things as the worst they can be, thank you earlier, me, for putting the water here. I imagined that I was going to need that. Which, I mean, it all sounds nice and it's great, but sometimes, there's a lot more going on than that. But sometimes that's all we've got to hang on to, is trusting God that He's got it all in hand. I mean, I've had a point where I have a literal year. I call it the worst year of my life. And it was the worst year of my life, not because it was terrible. I had a lot of fun, but I had a lot of fun in bad ways. And I didn't live very well. And I got to the end of it and I had absolutely nothing, less than nothing, to show for it. And I remember I sat with my then mentor, a guy from our church, and he was in a similar position, not because he'd been an idiot like me, just the way his life had gone. And we were both praying for direction. And we finished praying for a bit, and he goes, well, what have you got? And I looked at him and I went, and this, when you're in these kind of places and the most annoying thought that you ever thought could happen happens? I had one of those moments where I remembered this thing this guy had said. I didn't even really like the guy. He was our church youth worker. I didn't think much of him. I thought he was a bit useless. He'd taken a bunch of kids to a camp. He'd met some people from this place, and he loved them. And he was like, for some reason, I was home on holidays because the worst year of my life was my first year of uni. And for some reason, he's telling us all about these people. He's like, Don, you should go. I'm like, if you like them so much, you go. Just leave me alone, And that was the thought that comes. Oh, Alf mentioned these people, these cornerstone people. Now, this is the days before the internet, so you can't just look them up, right? We got no idea who these people are. For all I know, I could have been going to join a cult. We had to go to the post office to look up the yellow pages to get a phone number, and we get this phone number, and some random lady answers. She's like, oh, okay, I'll go get someone. And we have a bit of a talk, and this guy's like really blasé, and he just goes, oh, yeah, come on up, and gives us an address, and that's it. And so we pack up and we head to Broken Hill. But the thing is that ghost of a window, my life would be, I don't even know what my life would be without that one opening and that trust to go in that direction. I wouldn't be who I am now. I'd be an idiot. I'd be worse than an idiot. I wouldn't be married with 5 amazing kids. I wouldn't be married to one of the most amazing women in the world who is incredibly patient with me. And not at the same time, amazingly enough. No, I'm just kidding. I love you. So when we say things work for the good, it doesn't mean you're not going to have those smeared in the dirt, crashed out, smoking ruin moments. Doesn't mean you're not going to be sitting there going, what the heck is this? Doesn't mean none of that's going to happen. But don't worry. Don't use your imagination badly. Trust God. The other way I've already hinted at that we talk about imagination. Oh, sorry, I was meant to give you Luke 1:37 at the end of that. Nothing is impossible with God. That's the thing we need to remember. Nothing is impossible. So that's pretty huge that would say that. Nothing is impossible. You're sitting there, like I was sitting there, I'm going, I don't know, my life's a smoking ruin. God, I don't know where this is going. And there comes the lifeline. It may not always look pretty, but it's there, and it does the job. So the next part of imagination is, do we believe that nothing is impossible? Are we actually imagining enough when it comes to what God can do through us? Are our visions big enough? I mean, I hate using that word vision. I hate asking that question. I almost want to go and, burn myself at the stake for even saying that phrase. But it communicates something, and that's what I had to use. I think a lot of us go too small. And I think that this is the kind of thing that Rick Warren with this series was really pushing at. And I didn't want to go here, but it's true. But I'm not going to go where he went with it. I'm going to go somewhere else. You'd have heard of William Wilberforce, most of you. Is anyone? Yeah. Now, William Wilberforce is like, he's almost touted as the guy who single-handedly ends the North Atlantic slave trade. Right. William Wilberforce charged in there. He did all this stuff, la-da-da-da-da, and it ended. I will 100% guarantee you William Wilberforce did not imagine for a second that it was going to go the way it went. When it started, I think he was imagining this, setting up this groundswell and, that people would rally to this banner and protest, and the North Atlantic slave trade would be knocked over in a matter of, whatever, a few years. Not 40 years later, I think it was, that it took. But he imagined an idea that this slavery would end. And that in itself is a huge thing to imagine. And it is a massive journey to embark on. The thing that I feel like history does this a lot of injustice is that he did not do it alone. The fact that mostly his success comes to Sunday school teachers, teaching kids who then grew up and chose not to own slaves, and the way he actually ended the slave trade was that people stopped buying them because they didn't want them, because they thought it was wrong. And that's what actually killed the slave trade. And that's why it took so long. But I don't think he imagined that was the way it was going to go. But the thing was, he was faithful. He shot big. And I think this is the thing. What we saw, what we see in history, was not William Wilberforce ending the North Atlantic slave trade. It is a unified church that ends the North Atlantic slave trade. It is a unified, obedient Christian body. And that's where I think we get this whole imagination thing wrong. Is A, we don't look at what each other are imagining and get onto that and push that forward. But we don't look around and ask for help either. We're a body. Christ is the head, we're the body. And I feel like the image I get sometimes when I look at the church is that the body of Christ is thrashing around on the ground. One arm is trying to tear the other arm off. One arm is trying to kick its own butt. And then God's going, Jesus is there at the head going, I just want to pick up a glass of water, man. That's all we need to do, just pick up the glass. No, first we've got to do this. And I feel like the body of Christ is a bit of a car wreck sometimes. And as I was sitting here thinking about this, I felt like it'd be a really good time to get everyone to think about what a worldwide unified church could accomplish. What would we be able to accomplish as Christians if we weren't too busy snarking at each other, undermining each other? And I'm not talking within the Baptist church. I'm not even talking with MP and Lee. I'm talking across denominations. Almost lost my way. What would it be if the body of Christ stood obediently and only moved when Jesus said, do it? what would that world look like? I think it would be a very different world to the one we see today. I don't even know if it's possible, to be honest. If we can't imagine that, what would our church look like? What would this church look like if we were obedient and unified? Are we obedient and unified? I was trying to think through this. I didn't want to make a judgment call on it. I see both. I see parts of our church really strongly unified and amazing things happening. This morning, Martin was talking about Wanda's got a choir. I've known about Wanda's choir for ages, but he drew attention to it, and I felt like I wanted to give it. They meet and they go to nursing homes and they just sing and they just bring joy to old people in nursing homes. And that's just a group of people unified and obedient. They've heard the call and they're doing it. Youth group, same thing. Boys Brigade, same thing. These are groups of people in our church, unified and obedient and doing things. We owe the modern education system, as brutally flawed and useless as it is, but it was started by the church. Not many people know that. It started as Sunday schools. The whole point was that children in the Industrial Revolution were working 6-day weeks, sometimes up to 16 hours a day, from the age of 4. Anyone wants to complain about school now? And faithful, obedient Christians got together and went, let's teach them to read and write on a Sunday. Let's get them to church and just read and write. Teach them to read and write on a Sunday. That becomes the modern education system, obviously out of the hands of the church largely now, and that's where it all started to go wrong probably. But are you thinking that big? Are you letting your imagination roam that big to possibilities that can go that big? It's a hard thing. The other thing that I thought of with imagination is that, and this was a two-edged sword, and I wasn't actually going to bring it up. I feel like this one cuts me every time I handle it. Like, we're given an imagination as a gift, and creativity. I don't know if you've seen some of the cathedrals and things that people have built, stained glass windows, things like that. I'm not saying we need to go and do those things. But those were people who let their imagination and creativity serve God. And I wonder how much we're so busy just getting the job done that we don't stop to imagine how much better it could be if we just let God work according to his power in us. And that one's as convicting to me as it will be to anyone else, because I know half the time what I'm doing, it's not very creative. And I don't feel very creative, and I don't feel like much of what I do is very creative. But again, I wonder, what would be the effect in our community if the church was a hub of creativity? If people saw the life of Jesus coming out of us in that way, individually and as a group. I don't know. I would imagine it'd be pretty darn attractive though. I would imagine people would want to be a part of something like that. And I think we are. I think we're getting there. I think there's things that are happening, with the orchestra, the choirs, different other things. I think that's happening. But what more can we do? And are we all doing it? I think this morning in the meeting, we've got 112 volunteers and 113 members was what came up on the thing. Just looking around to see which member isn't volunteering. No, well, some of those volunteers aren't members, is what Chris pointed out. And so, are we all bringing our creativity to the church? Are we offering our creativity to God to use? is the question. So I guess that's what I want to leave you with. What could we accomplish in the community? What does God want you to imagine that, according to his power, he can accomplish through you? If you let him use your imagination. Thanks.